yeah. Hey, lib right. So what stops 6-year-olds from being in coal mines in Ancapistan?
Oh, I mean, there's a ton of reasons why. One is the parents not letting them do that. Number two is
Right.
why would any corporation be like, hey, we use child labor? Like,
Well, they
Excuse me.
wouldn't say that.
I'm not gonna buy
Cheap
your
labor.
product, you fucking assholes.
Have you
Freaking
seen? Have you seen Southeast Asia and all of the small children making clothes in factories that
Okay, but,
Okay,
like,
that's
okay,
the other
let's-
thing. It's like,
okay,
this shit
so,
is
like-
happening already
Also,
right now.
what-
Yes, there are
what-
companies that do that, but there are also you also have to take into account the government, and I'm not exactly sure that changing to a completely other form of system will prevent people from being corrupt and from doing things like that. And we see
Well,
that.
yeah,
What is it?
wait,
How is
wait.
it pronounced?
I have more questions
Uggers
about Ancapistan.
or something like that.
Oh,
And we see that
Oh,
huge
oh,
issue in northwestern China where we have. Oh no, I'm going to be assassinated for talking about this. Oh no, he killed himself by putting 2 bullets in the back of his head. Oh no. So
You got Epstein, buddy.
it's like the Ugger.
that works.
I'm just gonna say Ugger. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced.
Oh, yeah. I know what you
I have
mean.
no
Yeah,
idea
you-
how.
The
But I know what
Ugger
you're
population
talking
was like 80 to 90% northwestern China, and China just started encouraging all these people to go there from the rest of China because, of course, China has a bunch of different
The Britain
cultures. You have
strategy.
like Manchuria, and you have like the Shanghai area, and you have like
Hey.
Tibetans and that sort of thing, and they're all going up there. And after like I think it was 30 to 40 years at least, that population percent went down to like 50, and those people were getting upset, so they retaliated, and then the government used that as a way to go send in the military. So now they were like, oh well, these people are being riotous, we got to send people in. So then you had tanks on every corner, you had soldiers on every corner, you had military stations on every corner, and it was insane. And now they're taking those rioters, or even just Uggers in general, they are indoctrinating them in re-education camps. They are using prison labor. They can arrest you for pretty much any reason because it's China. I think that the difference that we're seeing between China and the U.S., or at least the U.S., a lot of U.S. businesses that are doing that with like iPhones with suicide nets around the buildings, right, for people who are making
Oh,
iPhones,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
depressing as hell.
It is.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Is China isn't afraid to hide it?
Yeah.
They're just
Exactly.
straight up. Yeah, we have prison labor. Yeah,
The Balkans.
And, like,
What
this
about
shit-
it?
and there's not. I feel like the U.S. at least companies are somewhat trying to hide it, but even then we see like Wayfair. There's something comes
that whole
out,
scandal there, that
people
was-
lose their minds,
Yeah,
Okay, that's
but-
2
actually
weeks
kind of
pass,
interesting.
it goes away. That's it.
If you look at like how the world marketplace is set up, you have like nations that are distinct, like their entire national identity is to, like, for instance, in China, it's to produce. Like, you look at anything in America, you look at the tag, it says made in China. But then when you look at places like America, we're where people come to buy things. Like, we're a consumption based nation. But then when you brought up the Wayfair situation, that's something that's like distinctly associated with the upper class, like paying like thousands of dollars for sex slaves. Like, even as taboo as that is in our country, it's still something that's distinctly upper class and is still like directly tied to our national identity, regardless of whether like the average person walking around the ground or like walking around would want to accept that as it doesn't really fall too far out of like our like the norm for us.
You know
which-
what that means? It's revolution time, boys.
Well, you see that. I mean, you see all nations all the time go through different economic changes to go from where we used to be a producing nation, a huge manufacturing nation, and we've changed now to a tech and service nation. And then now you see China's gone through that, and these Southeast Asian countries be super manufacturing. They produce all the Nike shoes, they produce all the iPhones, they produce pretty much everything you can think of. But I mean, you can usually see with capitalism a steady decline of child labor. I mean, you can go look back at even before the government and U.S. instituted the child labor laws. You can see a steady decline over the years of child labor going down because everybody was getting better wages and getting an increase in their wealth over time. And every time capital has been introduced in the country has gotten better over the years.
See, I feel like that's kind of a reductionist like look at labor in general. Because when you say like, oh yeah, it got better for the kids, but then like the second that they turn 18, now they're just like wage slaves, and that's just their entire life. Like when you look at like, for instance, like islands in the Sentinelese over in India and like other nations that are like like so far underdeveloped compared to like first world nations in America, they have like actual cults built around trying to replicate like first world technology. Like I've seen this before. I forget, it was like it's something cult where like literally they like use remnants of technology that we just like left behind, and they like try and like recreate these like air traffic control centers and like all these like planes landing and stuff, like thinking that we're like gods. And like that mentality, when it's like taken away from the setting of modern capitalism, it's sort of scary. Like it's a cult, but like no one wants to look at like their own lives and say, oh, I live in a cult. Like nobody wants to say, oh yeah, I worship work. Like nobody like thinks, oh, I wake up every day, I pray for 8 hours, which is basically like I go to work for 8 hours, then I come home and then I have the rest of my day for whatever.
Sounds like you're
But it's
spewing
kind of- I mean, this has always
propaganda,
been-
and I
work
think
has
that's
always been
based
true.
as frick.
Monkey
Yeah.
killed.
But I'm saying like work has always been the only way. I mean, it without work, without you doing work,
There is no economic system that will function without work.
And see,
Yeah,
I would agree with that, but I would say that the labor is going into that, like the value of that labor is going to the wrong hands. Like everyone wants to say, like, oh,
You're
a
saying to the
6-year-old,
worker.
a 6-year-old working is like, oh, that's so bad. But then if you were to say a 6-year-old is so skilled and so like prepared for life that they know how to like do a certain skill set at 6 years old, everyone would applaud that. Like if you had a 6-year-old who could code, they'd be like, wow, that 6-year-old's a fucking genius. But if you say, oh, 6-year-old just works in he's being forced to code this for that or for like a
I would
website
like
or
to
something.
point out that my first
the biggest
example
thing you
said
said
coal
there
mines.
was one word that was forced, and that's the biggest thing. Is like
Exactly.
Yeah, not forced, but when I was 6 years old, I wanted all that money. Like
Exactly. So imagine if you actually got all that money instead of like, oh yeah, you code for like $10 an hour and that's all you get. Meanwhile, you're producing like hundreds of dollars worth of labor for someone.
who
I
bought
feel
the
like if I had all that
who
money as a
gave you
kid, I
the-
just don't understand.
If I had all that money, I would buy Wayfair cabinets.
Oh. Oh.